All right, listen. You already know how this ends. Everyone does. So this isn't one of those wait till the shocking twist videos. There is no twist. No mystery villain hiding in the shadows. No genius criminal. It's worse than that. It's a guy who looks normal, almost aggressively normal. A house in Colorado that looks like every other house. A marriage that looks fine if you don't stare too long. 2 little girls. Another baby on the way. And, yeah, right now you're probably thinking, okay, I've heard this. What's new? That's fair. But here's the part that still messes with people. Nothing in this story happens fast. Nothing snaps. Nothing explodes. It's quiet, methodical, boring, almost, right up until it isn't. On the morning of August 13th, 2018, a woman and her children disappear. No blood, no struggle, no chaos, just absence. And the husband? He's on TV hours later, calm, soft-spoken, asking for them back like he misplaced his keys. If you're waiting for the moment where he looks like a monster, you're going to be waiting a long time. That's why this case still crawls under people's skin. Because if you weren't paying attention, you'd believe him. And that's the problem. Okay, so here's the thing. If you'd looked at the Watts family from the outside, just for a second, you wouldn't have stopped scrolling. Big house, smiling couple, 2 kids, another baby on the way. You've seen this story 1,000 times. Chris Watts. Quiet, soft-spoken. The kind of guy who blends into the background so well you almost forget he's there. Not flashy, not loud, not threatening, ever. Shanann, though, she was the opposite. Energetic, online a lot, always posting. Videos, photos, motivational talk, family moments. Some people loved it. Some people rolled their eyes. And yeah, if you're skeptical, I get it. Social media is fake. Everyone knows that. But here's where it gets uncomfortable. It wasn't just happy family content. It was constant, almost aggressive. Like if she stopped posting, the whole thing might fall apart. 2 daughters, Bella and Cece. Real kids, loud kids, messy kids, not props. And Shanann was pregnant again. 15 weeks. A boy. On paper, this is stability. But in reality, it was tense. Quietly tense. The kind of tension you don't notice until it's too late. Money problems, serious ones, debt, missed payments, a house they could barely afford. And Chris? He didn't fight. He didn't argue. He didn't explode. He disappeared. Internally. That's the part people miss. He wasn't raging. He wasn't violent. He wasn't even expressive. He was checked out. And when someone like that decides they want out, not just out of a marriage, but out of an entire life, that's when things get dangerous. Because nothing about this family looked broken. And that's exactly why it worked. This is usually where people expect fireworks. Affair, secrets, texts, late nights. But that's not what this was. It was quieter than that, which somehow makes it worse. Chris Watts meets Nicole Kessinger at work. Not a bar, not online, just work. The most boring place for something this destructive to start. And right away, he lies. Not dramatic lies, not villain monologues, small ones, convenient ones, the kind that slide out easily because no one challenges them. He tells her he's separating, that the marriage is basically over, that the house is just paperwork at this point. It's not true, not even close. But here's the thing. Chris doesn't just want an affair. He wants relief. Nicole represents silence. No kids yelling, no bills, no expectations, no one asking him to perform happiness on camera. And instead of handling that like an adult, talking, leaving, admitting failure, he starts fantasizing. Apartments, a fresh start, A version of himself where none of the old responsibilities follow him. And this is where I always pause. Because nothing forced him here. No gun to his head, no trap, no grand manipulation. Just a guy choosing the easiest emotional exit available. But reality doesn't work like that. You don't get to delete a life. You don't get to uninstall a family. And somewhere, quietly, privately, Chris seems to realize that. And instead of stopping, he keeps going. This is the part everyone wants details from. And honestly, there aren't many. That's what makes it uncomfortable. August 12th, 2018, late night. Shanann gets home from a work trip. It's after 2 in the morning. She's exhausted, pregnant, probably just wants to sleep. There's no sign of chaos, no yelling that anyone hears, no neighbors calling it in, just a closed door. Chris says they talk about separation, about the affair, about the marriage being over. Maybe that's true. Maybe parts of it are. It almost doesn't matter, because at some point, quietly, this stops being a conversation. There's no weapon, no sudden rage story that makes this easier to process. It's hands, pressure, time. That's it. And the girls? They're in the house, asleep, alive, breathing, existing in the same space while this happens. Sit with that for a second. Afterward, there's no breakdown, no panic, no moment where he calls for help and says he's done something terrible. He thinks logistics, what goes where, what time it is, what he has to do before work. That's the detail people struggle with. Not what happened, but how calm it was. Because if this were an accident, there'd be mess, noise, confusion. There isn't. Just a man moving forward with a plan he didn't come up with overnight. This is the part that makes people stop the video. Not because it's confusing. Because once you really picture it, you can't unpicture it. After the bedroom, Chris doesn't run. He doesn't spiral. He doesn't sit there wondering what he's done. He starts loading the truck. Not in a hurry. Not sloppy. Just methodical. Like someone packing for work, which, technically, he is. And here's the detail everyone wants to skip past because it wrecks the timeline we want to believe. The girls are awake. They walk out. They see their mother. They ask questions. They're scared in that quiet kid way where they don't have words for it yet. And he puts them in the truck anyway. Think about that. Don't dramatize it. Just think it through. It's a 45-minute drive to the oil site. That's not a moment. That's not panic. That's nearly an hour of time where you could stop, turn around, call someone, do literally anything else. He doesn't. No music, no chaos, just road, darkness, kids in the back seat, a body at his feet. And when they get there, he doesn't lose control. He doesn't suddenly realize this has gone too far. He finishes it. One child, then the other. Not in a blur, not by accident, sequentially. This is where people want a psychological explanation. Childhood trauma, hidden rage, something neat. There isn't one that makes this okay. This isn't snapping. This is follow-through. And once it's done, he cleans up, covers it, goes to work. That's the part that sticks, not the violence, the normalcy that comes after. This is where Chris runs into a problem. He can plan. He can compartmentalize. He can control a private situation. But now, other people are involved. Shanann's friend notices something's off, not hours later, almost immediately. Missed calls, missed appointments, that kind of thing that doesn't feel dramatic. Just wrong. Police show up for a welfare check before Chris even has time to rehearse. And suddenly, he has to perform. He smiles too much. Talks too calmly. Uses phrases that sound like they came from a script he didn't write himself. I just want them back. If they're watching, you've seen the footage. Or you will. And once you do, you can't unsee it. He doesn't look panicked. He looks inconvenienced. And here's the part that gets him. The house doesn't cooperate. Shanann's purse is still there. Her phone, the kids' medicine, their car seats. This isn't a disappearance. It's an interruption. Then the neighbor's surveillance footage comes up. The truck, the early morning loading. Chris watching the screen like he's seeing it for the first time. Except he isn't. That's when his body gives him away. Not tears, not shaking. Stillness. Too much of it. This is the moment the story stops belonging to him. And he knows it. This is the part people think is dramatic. It isn't. It's beige walls, bad chairs, fluorescent lights that make everyone look tired and slightly worse than they feel. An interrogation room designed to do one thing: wait you out. Chris sits there and keeps talking. That's his first mistake. He talks because silence makes him uncomfortable. He talks because he thinks cooperation equals control. He talks because he still believes this is a misunderstanding he can smooth over. He tells detectives he and Shanann were arguing, that she was emotional, that she might have taken the kids to punish him, that she'd done that kind of thing before. Notice the phrasing. Nothing is direct. Nothing is, I did this. It's always, she might have, she could have. Meanwhile, detectives aren't pushing. That's intentional. They let him fill the space, let him contradict himself, let the story stretch until it thins out. Timeline problems start stacking up. He says she left on foot, but her shoes are in the house. He says she took the kids, but their car seats never moved. He says he doesn't know where they are, but his phone data says otherwise. Then there's Nicole Kessinger. Investigators already know about her. Texts, calls, location data. The affair is no longer a secret, just something Chris doesn't realize is fully exposed yet. And that matters, because now his motive has a shape. Then comes the polygraph. People think polygraphs are magic. They're not. They're pressure tools. And Chris agrees to it, because he thinks honesty is still optional. It isn't. He fails almost immediately. Heart rate spikes. Breathing patterns shift. Stress responses pile up in ways you can't talk your way out of. When the examiner tells him he failed, something changes. Not emotionally, strategically. Chris asks for his father, and this is where the confession cracks out sideways. Sitting across from his dad, Chris finally says something real. Just not the truth. He claims Shanann killed the girls, that he snapped afterward, that he's only guilty of reacting. It's a lie built for sympathy. One last attempt to control the narrative, but it doesn't hold. Because the evidence doesn't support it. Because the timelines don't match. Because the oil site doesn't make sense for a crime of rage. Confronted again, this time without an audience, Chris finally admits it. All of it. What he did, where he went, what he used, how he disposed of them. No screaming, no breakdown, just facts. And once those words are out, the case is over. Not solved, ended. Once Chris confesses, the case doesn't explode. It goes quiet. No chase, no dramatic courtroom battle, no last-minute twist that makes this feel like a movie instead of what it is. He's arrested on August 15th, 2 days after the murders. 2 days. That's how long the missing family story lasts before reality catches up. The charges come fast. And they're heavy. Multiple counts of first-degree murder, unlawful termination of a pregnancy, tampering with bodies. There's no room to negotiate the facts anymore. The only question left is how much space the legal system gives him to speak. Not much. In November, Chris pleads guilty. No trial, no defense strategy, no public fight to explain himself. Some people think that's mercy. It isn't. It's containment. Because a trial would mean details, photos, testimony, and there's no version of that where anyone comes out cleaner. At sentencing, Shanann's family speaks, her parents, her brother, and this is where the air leaves the room. They talk about Bella, how careful she was, Cece, how loud she was, Shanann, how hard she tried to hold everything together. Chris listens. He doesn't interrupt. He doesn't cry much. He says he's sorry. He says he'll carry this forever. But sorry doesn't rewind anything. He's sentenced to life without parole, multiple times over. One sentence for each life he erased. No release date, no second chapter, no future version of this story where it softens. He's transferred out of Colorado, kept isolated, not for his safety, but because cases like this don't fade inside prison walls. They follow you, and that's it. Not closure, not justice in the satisfying sense, just an ending that exists because it has to. People like to ask what this case means. That's usually a sign we're uncomfortable with what it actually is, because if there were a clean takeaway, some checklist, some warning sign we could memorize, this would feel safer. Contained, solved. But the truth is messier. Chris Watts wasn't some mystery waiting to be uncovered. He didn't spiral publicly. He didn't broadcast his resentment. He didn't leave a trail of obvious red flags that scream, "This is going to end badly." He went to work. He smiled. He avoided conflict. And when he decided he wanted out, he didn't choose honesty. He chose erasure. That's what people struggle with. Not the violence itself, but the idea that someone can slowly detach from a life while still living inside it. That you can be present and gone at the same time. The Watts family didn't disappear because no one was watching. They disappeared because someone was, and chose not to care. There's no ending where this makes sense, no framing that makes it easier to swallow, no version of the story where the final minutes feel earned or logical. Just 3 lives that should still be here. And a reminder that sometimes the scariest stories aren't about monsters hiding in the dark. They're about the ones who never leave the room.